As someone who deeply believes in the power of podcasting, not just as a platform for thought leadership, but also as one of the most effective visibility and marketing tools for service based businesses, you can turn podcast guesting into warm leads, powerful networking opportunities, and real revenue. If you've ever wondered how to stop being the best kept secret in your space, then this episode will be one of your roadmaps. Welcome back. You are listening to the podcast created for female service providers featuring inspiring women as our guests. Each episode brings you expert interviews and practical tips to help you master marketing without the crazy stress and overwhelm. If that sounds like something that you would love, then we definitely invite you to subscribe both to the podcast and YouTube channel, whichever you prefer to take in your learnings. Today, I am so excited to be chatting with Jessica Rhodes. Jessica is the founder of Interview Connections, the first and leading podcast booking agency that she launched in 2013, long before podcast guesting was even a trend. With over 30,000 podcast interviews booked for more than 800 clients, Jessica is a pioneer in using podcast guest appearances as a revenue-driving marketing strategy. And FYI, it works. Her mission is to help entrepreneurs break out of obscurity and generate warm, qualified leads through the power of human connection. Her clients have used podcast interviews to generate millions in revenue, sell thousands of books, and transform lives through visibility and credibility. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you, Jen. I'm super excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you here. This is one of the most effective strategies for getting spread out there, right? We always want more eyeballs, right, in our marketing. And it is amazing because it is very much like Pinterest, which I teach about all the time, in that it's evergreen. It's there forever. And I am always shocked at podcasts that I've done 3 years ago, and people are booking me now for services from 3 years ago. It's just silly.
It's so silly and I love it so much. And also I love the fact that you teach Pinterest I don't know what the right word is, but when I started my business, like I was a virtual assistant, and one of the first things, because when you first start, you're like, okay, I need to learn something. I need to become an expert at something and then help people do that thing. And I took a Pinterest course. And so I helped like my clients, I helped them with their Pinterest marketing. So I had a short stint before I started doing podcast booking with Pinterest. So I love that you do that.
Amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's podcasts just like YouTube, just like Google, obviously, and just like Pinterest are search marketing platforms. People are actively engaged and want your information. So get on there. Look,
Yes. I know. I'm going to have to hold back because now I want to ask you all about Pinterest and like what's new, but this is about podcasting.
No
Be a
worries.
duo episode.
Any of your people need a Pinterest expert, you just let them know I'm available.
Okay, perfect.
So tell me a little bit. I ask all my guests this. Tell me about your windy road that really led you to what you're doing today. We touched on a little bit of it before.
Yeah. So I led a door-to-door field canvas. So for 6 years before I started my business at the young age of 25, I worked for a nonprofit called Clean Water Action. So when I was 19 years old, freshman in college, did not want to be working for $6 an hour as a like work study intern at college. So I was like, I saw this flyer on campus, $10 an hour, save the environment. And I was like, $10 an hour is almost double what I'm making now. So that sounds amazing. So I was living in Philadelphia. And so I went to Center City, had an interview. The second interview was like, for 4 hours or 2 hours, you're going to go knock on doors. We're not going to pay you. We just need to know that you can do this, basically. So they paid me like $20 to do that interview. And I raised like $50 going door to door in the projects of Philadelphia. And honestly, I fell in love with it. So for the next 6 years,
Wow.
I went door to door I did community organizing, I fundraised, I just knocked on doors and got people to write checks to donate to the organization.
Oh my, that is worse than telemarketing. I think because it's like in person and people can close a door on you instead of just hang up on you. Because I've done that telemarketing years and years and years ago too.
It was thrilling. We always say the people who do canvassing or door to door. I know canvassing is special because it's not just selling crap, but like not crap. I don't want to offend anyone who did door to
No,
door
no, no.
sales.
Yeah, get it.
But there was real passion. We're like, there's a bill coming up. The landfill's going to be full in 12 years. We need to do something now. Like I was hustling. And I found that the majority of people were actually really nice. Now, sure, people did, sometimes they're like not interested or they ignore you, but people gave us snacks. They let us use their bathroom. I was outside all the time. Like my mental health was great. So I was just walking outside all the time,
Your
fresh
health
air.
must have been insane.
Wasn't the best. I mean, I was also like 20,
I
so
know. You know, I can do anything and you look great at 20.
exactly, exactly. I was like eating burgers at 10 p.m. before bed and still like ripped.
Insane.
But it was so fun. So I did that like through college, and then I elevated into a director position. So I had when I moved up to Rhode Island because that's where my boyfriend at the time, now husband, he was in law school here. So moved up here, and they were like, "Well, we have an opening. We're looking for a new canvas director." So then I actually led the whole office for a couple of years, and then when I got pregnant, I canvassed for a few months into my pregnancy and was like, "Nope, there's too much walking."
And then you have a baby at home and it's like, that's not
Yeah.
going to be something that happens.
Yeah. So I was like, I'll be leaving when the baby comes. And I worked up until 2 days before the baby came.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
crazy. And what came next?
So the baby was born. My son was born in March 2013. I had knowing that I was going to be leaving the job. I talked to my parents and I was like, I really don't want to do this job anymore after the baby comes. Like, this is not the lifestyle that I want because I was working till 10 p.m. It was like a long day. So I was like, I know I don't want to do this as a new mom. And my dad's an entrepreneur, he's a business coach. So he told me, he's like, you should start your own business as a virtual assistant. And I was like, what's that? Because I'm like door to door. I don't know anything about the online business world. And he goes, I'll show you. I'll be your first client. And so my dad was my
Love
first client.
dads. We love dads.
We love dads. And he's like, he had all these, info products and courses about business and marketing and client retention and all the things. And so I was going through his courses and reading books about business and marketing. And I was like, okay, I was just soaking it all in. And I started doing work for my dad as a virtual assistant in his company on the weekends and nights and outside, of my work hours.
Yeah.
And then when the baby came, I then kind of transitioned and just started building up a virtual assistant business.
How fun. And then how did you pivot from the virtual assistant business to this? Because, in 2013, it was not as prominent as it is right now, podcasting.
Yeah, exactly. It was a very different landscape at the time. So, like I mentioned, I did Pinterest marketing as well. So when I was doing the virtual assistant work for my dad, I was doing anything he needed me to do. Like when you have a virtual assistant, you're like, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? So I was like checking links on his website. I was like his fulfillment house for his books. Like I would be going to the post office with the baby and just like sending out his books and just, helping him with his Pinterest account and just doing anything. I was doing sales calls for his, newsletter marketing business. So I was doing anything. And then he said, I really like he had his own podcast. He started that in 2012. And he goes, I like doing podcast interviews. Why don't you, see if you can get me booked on more podcasts? Yeah. He was like, why don't you get me booked? And I was like, okay. And so I just started Googling like business podcasts, marketing podcasts. And I just like, well, I've gone door to door for years. So I was just emailing people and I'm like,
You have no fear at this point. After you've been door
no
to
fear.
door, picking up the phone is nothing.
Sending an email was like nothing. Who cares? Like no fear. So I'm emailing. And at that time, I didn't know the podcast industry at all. I was just Googling for business podcasts. So I had no idea who was big and who was small. So I was pitching to really big shows. Like I didn't have any sense of, who was a big name. Like the naivete really got me a long way. And so I'm reaching out and pitching him. And and started getting responses. And I was like, oh, this is so fun. And my dad is doing these podcast interviews and it's just going really well. Like he has podcast hosts that are becoming his client. He's bringing podcast hosts onto his show. So they're kind of doing that pod swap. And he's still like, he's still traveling. He's still going to certain conferences and stuff. And then he ends up meeting people in person who he had done a podcast interview with. So I'm like witnessing the power. I'm like,
Yeah.
I brought you two together. Like I made this happen. This is amazing.
This $10,000 deal is from me 2 years ago presenting you. I mean, really, it is insane.
Yeah. So that's kind of how it got started. And so my dad, once it was really working for him, he would refer some people to me. So my next couple of clients were his friends that he's like, my daughter has a virtual assistant business. She can do this is for you. So I got a couple of clients that way. And then it was about May of 2013. I said to my dad, I love everything I'm doing for you, but if I'm going to make more money, I can't just be doing hourly VA work. I need to build a business. And so yeah, he helped me look at everything I was doing from the podcast to the Pinterest to the client services. And I'm like, I really love the podcast booking because I love matchmaking people. I love kind of identifying where there's a good match, like topic wise and story wise. And also just, I loved matchmaking the personalities. I'm like, oh my God, you guys are going to love each other.
I love it. I love it.
And so, yeah, he helped me come up with this idea to create an agency, a podcast booking agency. At the time, there were no podcast booking agencies. Nobody was pitching and booking podcasts as a service, and PR firms were not booking their clients on podcasts. Podcasts were too small.
A little below, like getting on a TV show or a local news. Like podcasts were like the redheaded stepchild. Not anymore.
Exactly. And some of my greatest amusements has been seeing people who back then like wouldn't take my call, so to speak, and then later seeing that they started a podcast, and I'm like, oh, how the tables have turned.
Oh yes, that's crazy.
And also like I was able to get bookings and book interviews with big names because they saw podcasts as a really good opportunity. Like it was interesting as when the industry wasn't as big, but people with vision saw the opportunity, they saw the value. And there weren't that many people in the industry yet. So like, do you know the host of Bar Rescue, John Taffer?
Yeah.
So I booked him on my dad's podcast. And like, so I also like found the niche. Like I found that reality stars, like business type of reality stars were really easy to book because they were kind of just getting this fame. And so they really wanted more press, but there weren't that many podcasts. There wasn't like major podcast tours. So I was able to book some amazing interviews with people that were on TV shows, like on Entrepreneur, like a bunch of people from Shark Tank, not the investors, but like people that had presented on Shark Tank. And it was so fun. I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome.
You saw that need that they have for getting like being able to say, hey, I was just asked to be on this podcast and on social media or this, that, or the other. Yeah, it is. And now it's like a whole section of marketing is all on you having a podcast or podcast guesting. Like it's so amazing.
Exactly. It was just so fun. Like my clients were the hosts and I would find people for them to interview. And then things kind of shifted where more people want to be a guest. So now we primarily book people on other people's podcasts, but our podcast hosts, they're not paying clients, but we have so many podcast hosts that are like, hey, need more guests. I'm like, here's who we got.
It's amazing. For service-based female entrepreneurs, what's the first step, would you think, we'll talk about getting on podcasts, but what is the first step to like monetizing podcast interviews effectively? Because I feel like when I was on some podcasts in the very beginning, I'd be like, cool, I'm on a podcast.
Yeah.
Okay. Like you need to share it everywhere. I need a Spotify playlist of all of my guest appearances so that I can include that in pitches and things like that. But talk to me a little bit about the monetizing aspect.
I love this. I just had a consultation call this morning with a female service-based entrepreneur, and I was kind of going through and kind of like assessing her business to see if she's ready to monetize podcast interviews. Yeah. And so I share kind of some of the findings there that'll help people know. So there needs to be a sound business model. Like that's first off, because a lot of service-based entrepreneurs are like, yeah, I want to get on podcasts. And I ask, okay, what is your offer? What's the price point? Do you have a way? Do you have a predictable sales and marketing funnel where if you get visibility, you know you can convert? A lot of times people are like, no, I have some like one-on-one clients and but there's like structural things in their
Correct.
business that if
Correct.
you're going to go get in front of thousands of people on podcasts, you're not going to convert it. So that if you want to convert sales from podcast appearances, you need to have the basic foundations of like you have an offer that's scalable, like it's priced correctly. If you have some like low month to month thing, it's a house of cards. You know, you can't
Correct.
convert that effectively. You have a way to collect people's email addresses and build an ecosystem of your own followers and not just have an Instagram where you're not really going to be able to own your
Thank you for
audience.
saying that. There's so many people that just are on Instagram and they could close your account tomorrow and you have no recourse. You can't get all those people back.
I hear it all the time. Oftentimes, like I'm in a mastermind group with over 100 women, and they're all like very successful entrepreneurs. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody say, like, people with really big Instagram followings are like, I just got shut down and I lost my entire audience. Like, it's terrifying. And so, don't build your whole business on a platform you do not own. Use those
Period.
platforms, use the rented platforms, but like have your own website, your own email list, like have your own way. So a sound business model. And then when you're actually on podcasts, be on podcasts that have your ideal clients listening.
I can't tell you, like, I'm a very specific female service provider podcast. Like it's pretty clear. And I
Yes.
get at least two emails or pitches for men every day. Every day. That tells me they're not doing the research. And I get really upset because it's a waste of my time. I mean, I have someone now that go through those emails, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying, it's always shocking to me. On the flip side of it, you don't have to be, if I'm a photographer, I don't have to just be on a wedding podcast. I
Yeah.
can also be on other podcasts. The key is your ideal client needs to
Mhm.
be listening to those podcasts, right?
Exactly. Yeah. There's a couple things I want to touch on here
Okay.
that I agree with 100% what you're saying here. So, number one, when you're out there pitching, like be I see it all the time because this industry that I started has grown so much. There's like, softwares and there's like AI, like we'll pitch people. It's AI that'll pitch you to podcasts, and there's virtual assistants that'll do it for next to nothing. And I'm just like, okay, this is not where you want to be cheap. Your reputation is not where you want to be cheap. I get pitches all the time because my business partner and I host our own podcast. We don't actually take guests on because she and I co-host and go over these topics
Yeah.
together. And if we did, we would bring our clients on because we have
You
hundreds
only
of
have to
people.
listen. You only have to look through 2 or 3 to know that you're not doing guests. I don't understand.
Exactly, exactly. And so I got a pitch the other day that was like, "Hey, I know you help like women business owners." First of all, I mean, we're not a women only business, but okay, we do like to help women too. And they said, "Would you like a male expert to talk about this?" And I'm like, "There's so many things wrong with this pitch."
Wow.
So I know there's people that will pitch you to podcasts for very cheap, but this is not where you want to.
So,
This is your reputation. Okay, so that's my little thing
yeah,
there.
if your business name go and I have not worked with other people that have companies that have pitched for a guest when they
Mhm.
don't do the research. So, I mean,
Yeah,
I don't wanna work with them, right? Not
exactly,
smart.
exactly. Like we built our own. We invest like we built our own software, which I have no goal
So
or
hard.
desire to get into the software development into business because it's very difficult to build a good software. But we had to because there were no podcast databases because we started the industry. So we built our own. And so now when we're pitching podcast hosts, we can leave a tag that says like, do not pitch or be on hold or be like, we have all those types of things. So anyway, that's my thing
Yeah.
about that. But yes, be on podcasts that have your target audience listening. That's huge because if you're not speaking to the right audience, then it's going to be hard to convert. You also need to have topics, be interviewed on topics that your ideal clients want to hear about.
And that you wanna sell. Like, you don't
Exactly.
wanna talk about something you don't wanna sell.
Yes, 100%. So a lot of times we're like, well, I'm on the right podcasts, but they're talking about topics that don't address their ideal client's biggest challenges that they could help them with.
Yeah.
So there's a messaging thing too. And this is why it's important to audit the process, to don't just have AI be pitching you to podcasts, but to actually be, working with a coach, working with somebody that can listen to your interviews and audit your messaging and help you make sure that what you're putting out, because it's hard to read the label from inside the bottle. And so if you're doing this all on your own, it's difficult to figure out, is this messaging landing? Is it working? Have other people around you who can listen to you, see what you're talking about, read your bio, and think, is this the right listening of you? Is this how you want to be perceived? All of that is an important part of the process because this works, it works. But just like with any
Absolutely will.
strategy, there's many different factors that will impact how well it works.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've had a lot of pitches for me to be a guest on a podcast, especially ones that are like talking about your background, like what your life story, in other words, like a bio book kind of
Yeah.
situation. And I don't, because A, there's a lot of things that I may not want to share publicly. And there
Mhm.
are also, I don't know that my ideal client is listening to those all the time. Maybe some are, but I have very limited time. And so you want to be very selective so that when you're on a podcast, you also want to like share about it, right?
Exact. Yes, I agree with that totally. And you also, I like that you're self-aware too about like what type of interview feels best for you. I'm very similar to you. I'm very tactical. I like getting into it. I'm very concise, direct to the point. I've done some podcast interviews where people ask me like, "Will you come on and like we'll go through your story and have this deep conversation?" And I'll do those, but it's very uncomfortable for me because it's not how I communicate and it's much slower than I prefer to
Yeah, no,
to
I
work.
agree. I've never put it into words, but what you just said is exactly how I feel. That's so it feels like almost like nails on a chalkboard.
Yeah, it's not for me. But it's like my business partner is great on those shows.
That's
She has
perfect.
like that's what works for her. For her, she doesn't like going on the marketing shows and just giving the tactics. She's much more like into the stories. But, so it's good to have that balance, but it's just about like finding where will you thrive? Where will you be in your zone of genius? Because you can tell if I'm on that type of show, I'm not in my best. If she's on probably this type of show, it's not ideal. Like you've got to be on the right type of show for your personality.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're like brand new to being a guest on a podcast, you probably don't
Yeah.
want to go on a really big podcast the first time. Like
Yes.
you can find success with starting with the smaller podcasts and get your feet wet and get comfortable first. If you're someone who like what I love about podcasts is its voice. Now we have video on this one too, but for the most part, right? It's voice. And there's something personal about a voice. When people listen to you, there's almost an implied know, like, and trust that comes
Mhm.
from hearing your voice. I could go on and on and on for the days, but I want to ask a
Yeah.
couple questions because I keep going off topic. We could sit and chat for like an hour about nothing. But on the podcast, I want to make sure we're giving really actionable advice. And what we've said is very actionable. But can you walk us through a strategy that will turn one podcast interview into multiple high converting social media assets using
Mhm.
AI? Like what makes podcast audiences more likely to convert than traditional social media followers, in other words?
Yes. Yes. I know I poo-pooed on AI a little bit, but now I'm going to tell you how to use
And
it.
I know it has to be thoroughly used. So you have to be
Ha-
very careful.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So you have to use AI in the ways that's going to help you optimize what you're doing, not replace actual human connection. So when you're on a podcast, for the most part, you're going to get a video recording of that podcast. Like it'll go up on YouTube, you'll get a link to that. And then you're going to go into a program. There's a few different programs out there. The one that I like to use is called Opus
Yes.
Pro.
Yes.
Opus Pro. It could not be simpler. I mean, I made like looms and tutorials, and I'm like, I'm telling you, it's 3 clicks. Like, you don't need a tutorial, but I'll give you one. And so you take the link to the interview, you put it into Opus, and you click get clips.
It is
Okay.
literally, you guys, nobody is going to believe this listening unless you know Opus, but it is literally that easy. And it also tells you what they think is the best. It's not always the
Exactly.
best, but it's pretty good. It's pretty spot on when I comparing it to other platforms.
I love it because it'll automatically edit the video so that if it's a side by side Zoom recording, it'll put you like stacked on top of each other. So that way it looks good on like an Instagram reel or a TikTok or a YouTube short. And I like that it grades. It'll say, A, B, C, D, F, like this is a great flow, it's a good hook. And I go through and kind of watch them to see, would this stop the scroll? Would the first few seconds of this reel stop somebody in the scroll? And is this the right thing? So then what I'll do is I'll click into the video, the little reel, and then I'll copy the transcript of the video because it'll transcribe the clip. I'll go to ChatGPT and I'll say, here's the transcript of the clip. Can you write me a caption for this video for Instagram?
And I'm going to take
Then
it a
I'll,
step. I'm going to take it a step further.
okay, let's go.
Because I
Let's
do
party.
this every week for multiple of my clients to help with podcast management. And so it, I just love it so much. I say, start the caption off with a hook in the form of a question that will get people to stop the scroll.
Okay, I see you.
Create a caption that creates engagement. This is the call to action. Either, take action to go watch it or go listen to it, or a question about what that clip is about and what people think. Because asking people in a call to action to leave social media does not work as effectively as saying, is this something that you would do? Or is this, whatever, like a thought-provoking question. People want to give their opinion. So sorry.
Do not apologize. I'm thrilled to hear you say that. You're educating me, and now this is going to improve my strategy. I'm thrilled.
Love it.
This will be the clip we post on social media.
This is going to be the clip. You betcha. Because when I deliver the information to my podcast guests, I actually attach 2 short form videos as well. So and captions so that they can go ahead and just publish it at will if they want to and not have to go through the work. It's the way that I ensure people are listening.
I love that. I love that so, so much. So, okay, now you agree. Oh, please, Jen, do not apologize. You should say you're welcome, not sorry.
No, I'm very passionate about marketing, as you can tell.
I love it. I love it. Okay, we are kindred spirits here.
Okay.
So that's how you're going to use Opus and ChatGPT. The other thing that I love to use podcast appearances for is in my sales and marketing process. So I'll send an episode of a podcast to a lead before they have a sales call. Because when people come to sales calls after hearing you on a podcast or hearing your podcast,
I've never
calls go way better.
You don't understand. I'm so excited right now. My mind is going crazy. Oh my gosh.
It's such a game changer because as you do this, and you had multiple podcasts. So for you, Jen, like think about what episodes of your podcast are going to move the needle for sales calls and send them that. Like all the episodes of our podcast as of late have been topics that I want my ideal clients to hear before a consultation call. Yeah.
Oh my
so
gosh, that's brilliant. This might be a clip also.
We're on fire. I love this. I love this. Like so we have episodes like when Margie and I plan our podcast episodes, we're like, what do we want what do our ideal clients, like, what are they asking? What are their objections? And then we do episodes literally addressing those episodes. Mm-hmm. So good. So yeah, sending them the confirmation email. And then I'll also use podcasts to get calls booked. So I'll like send interviews, episodes out to my list. And I'm like, here's a podcast episode. Like, here's a podcast recommendation. Just like little value drop. And I use SMS marketing. So I'll text a link out. And that's really great because people are they get it on their phone.
They always click. When it's
easy.
On a desktop or laptop, sometimes you don't. But on a cell phone, that FOMO is just too much.
Yeah, I just did a post on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago because I saw and I showed the screenshot of the data. You strike me as somebody that likes marketing data. I showed the screenshot of like the marketing email, like the past few emails. And the email with the highest open rate and the highest click-through rate was the subject line was an emoji of headphones and it said new podcast episode. And then
Okay, that's another note that I am taking because I have not done that. I share every week whenever the podcast is, like I've done that, but I've never used that as the subject line.
Yeah, I love playing around with different subject lines and just seeing because there's always like different subject lines you can use that's kind of about the content, but I like kind of going between things that are just very topic driven, like how to do this. I did an email today about booking consults, and the subject line is can we talk? So going to give everyone a heart attack with that, but then they'll book a call.
Well, and this so first of all, like this whole subject line thing is it's all about curiosity, which is the same
Yes.
with social media, which is the same with YouTube. Like it's the same out there all the time. People are
Hmm.
busy. They have a ton of information coming in like a fire hose and it's overwhelming. And in order to even get seen,
Yeah.
sometimes you have to be a little, you have to test too. Marketing is all about testing.
It's all about testing, and the same thing isn't going to work all the time. So you have to have a few different things that work. But the subject lines, the Instagram reels, all these little things that people see within seconds, that gets them hooked. But then the podcast is what deepens the relationship.
That's
Because you
no like
can't,
and trust. Correct.
exactly, you can't grow a business and close sales with those hooks alone. Like an open rate is not going to pay your bills.
No.
You then, once they're in the email, you have to have something that's actually going to deepen the connection with them to the point where they're like, I'm in.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. How can entrepreneurs use post interview networking to unlock hidden opportunities and lasting business relationships?
Yeah. So this is all about the relationship with the host. Like, Jen, I'm going to tell you right now, we are so like minded.
We
I know
are
you're
going to connect.
we are going to connect. Like I can see, and I know you're super busy. I'm busy, but you're a host. I get interviewed on multiple podcasts a month. You're a host that I would say like we should do an Instagram live together. Like we should
oh,
do something else to like, because clearly there's so much more to talk about. So that's what the post interview networking is. It's not doing the interview and being like, okay, bye, thank you. Like, let me know when it goes live. Sometimes that's what you're going to say because it's not every interview needs to be a love connection, but
yeah.
you're going to have these interviews where you're just like, oh my God, like there's this great chemistry and there's great like mindedness. And those are the connections where you want to see like, what else can we do together?
I'm really bad at that. I'm
Oh, you know
really
what? It's
bad.
okay.
Really, I'm apologizing to all the hosts out there. I am I am really bad about that. And I feel like listening to what you just said has probably been said to me multiple times over the last month. Like sending me a message that
Yeah.
I need to be doing more of that, not follow up per se, but just reaching back at the networking piece, right? I even have a spreadsheet, so like I have no excuse.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
It's important, and also I wanna give everyone the out that you can't do everything. We're like, you can't do everything, and you're not always going to be in a season of a lot of networking, and so if all you have the bandwidth for is to do a really great episode and post it and share it, do that. These hosts aren't disappearing. You can always email them a year later and say, I loved being on your show. I'd love to reconnect. I was so busy the last year. So I'm going to give everyone the opportunity to let themselves off the hook because as the expert in this strategy, I don't do everything I tell everyone to do. Like it's always a work in progress.
Well, and it also depends on the guest, I would think too.
Yeah.
Like I could sit and like talk with you about for like hours. That's
Yeah.
something that we could potentially do, like you said, like a live
Mhm.
or whatever. But it's really smart. I think follow up is super huge for someone that does not have the money to be hiring an agency, as an
Mhm.
example. What is something that you would recommend in terms of sending a pitch? I didn't even have this question on our list. I
Yeah.
just, I feel like people feel uncomfortable pitching themselves. And yet
Yeah.
there's times in your business when you can afford to outsource, and there's times in your business where you can't. What do
Mhm.
they do?
Yeah, no, I totally get it. You got time or money, and sometimes both. I really recommend. I think everyone should be podcast guesting if this is a strategy that makes sense for your business. And I also get that not everyone has the abilities, to invest in an agency. And so if you don't yet, I would say do it yourself to get started. And I want to simplify it down so it doesn't feel overwhelming. It's about, find like let's break this down into super actionable steps. Like research a list of 10 podcasts that are interview based that have at least 20 episodes, or maybe you're like, I really got to start small. Maybe they have 10 episodes live. Like, go for a new show they're currently publishing, and they're in your target audience. Like it's a type of show that feels in alignment. You could just, it's Google, it's listen, notes.com is, there's a bunch of different directories out there, but at this 2025, we all know how to Google and find things. So make a list and then connect with each one of those podcast hosts. Listen to an episode of their show, get connected with them on social media. And what I would do is, if I was in the shoes of doing this myself, I didn't own a podcast booking agency. What I would do is I would reach out to every one of those hosts after listening to an episode and say, are you open to a guest suggestion? I'd love to send an idea to you.
Perfect. And low pressure. Right?
Low pressure. You're not going in hot with a pitch that might get turned down. Because at this point, podcast hosts are kind of sensitive to getting pitches because they just get pitched every single day. So I like to build yeses. That's a sales thing. Build yeses. Are you open to a guest suggestion? I have a topic in mind that I think might be a good fit. Are you open to that?
And that creates curiosity, which is, I think, the number one thing in 2025 that you could do with your marketing is create a sense of curiosity. So that
Exactly.
I would reply to that email, and I get
Yeah.
a lot of pitches. So
Yeah. And they might say, like, no, I'm totally booked up. Like, thanks for reaching out. I just really can't, I'm not looking for any guests. Or they might be like, yeah, I'm like kind of curious, what you have in mind. And then just say, like, this is who I am. This is my expert. I mean, I did this for myself, like in the early days. I would pitch myself. I'll actually share the story. So I pitched myself. One of my early clients was Michael Stelzner. He's the CEO of Social Media Examiner. And I met him at a conference. I was introduced to him at New Media Expo in like 2014. And so I met him. He hired me. He was starting a podcast called Parenting Adventures. And he's like, I'm going to give you a shot. Will you book the guest for my show? And so he was one of my early clients. I booked the guest for a show. And so having that connection with him, I pitched myself for the Social Media Examiner podcast.
Yes.
And I'm like, Michael, like, you have a marketing podcast. You've never done an episode about podcast guesting.
yes.
I did this in person too, I'm pretty sure. So that takes even more guts.
Oh my God, that's even more brave.
Yeah. I feel like a sense memory of this. And I'm like, I would love to come on the show. And he said no. So I didn't.
Ouch.
But I'm sharing that because I'm telling you, if I can pitch myself in person to the the world's largest social media blog CEO and get turned down, like, you're gonna be okay. It's not
right. You're still living. You're here on my podcast,
Yeah.
so it's not over death.
Yeah, and he wasn't like, oh, you're like, Michael is awesome. Like, we are colleagues. He's like, you're great. It's just not a fit for my show. And I'm like, okay, like, I saw the potential. He did not. That's okay. Like,
Yep.
hosts have their own vision for the topics that they want to talk about. And so pitch yourself. Not everyone's going to say yes, but you will never know unless you go for it.
Yeah, and look at the content that they have, not just listen to like one podcast, but if you're wanting to pitch something, you want to see the catalog of what they have most recently, like the last 10,
Yeah.
20, 30 podcasts,
Mhm.
and see if you would fit in that. In other words, can you add to that, or is it like way out of the realm? The other thing that I will say that was successful for me getting a specific guest that I wanted on my podcast, but also for people that are like pitching to me, is when people are following me on social media and they're liking and they're commenting, because liking alone, nobody sees all the likes. You
Yeah.
just can't, right? But commenting. And I saw this person comment a couple times.
Mhm.
I saw that. Then I got the pitch. This one came through and I'm like, that name looks familiar. And I clicked on it and I booked them. That helps get your foot in the door.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's kind of part of my advice of getting on even bigger shows is like, make strategic investments. Like, not necessarily pay to play. I'm not really a huge fan of that, although I get that that's where the industry is going a lot with top tier shows. But I mean, I've been a guest on shows that have really, really big audiences, and I've invested tens upon thousands of dollars to be in their mastermind or
yes.
right, or in their course or whatever. And so I'm not saying go buy the program to be on the show, but when you show people that you are somebody that invests and that you're investing in them first, then you have a leverage point to, be somebody that they're like, oh, they've invested in me, so I'm going to invest in them. Like it's just about playing the game of business. Business is a game, you got to play it.
It is all, I mean, people have said this since the dawn of time, and I think that it's still true. It's really not always what you know, it's who you know. And
Absolutely.
there could be a friend that's on LinkedIn that is a first, like, what is it called? First
Connection.
connection. I've said to them, would you mind introducing me to this person? Because I would really love to have them on the podcast. It works almost every time.
Yeah, totally.
All right. In 2025, how should business owners think about long form content like podcasts as part of their marketing strategy?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of touched on it earlier with like the open rates and the reels and everything. Like what I've heard, I was on a panel last year. Cami Gildner led it. It was a panel of other, female entrepreneurs, and we were just having this conversation about like kind of the state of business and consumers in 2025, and kind of the trend of that conversation was on this trust recession and how people
Yes.
not it's not
I've
about the
never heard
number of
that word, trust recession. I totally believe that right now, today.
yeah, and I Eleanor Beaton, who is a business friend of mine, I don't know if she coined it. She's the one who I heard it from, so I'm not sure who came up with it, but it really is. It's not just about how many touch points somebody needs. What she shared in the panel that I was on with her is that people before they even enter your sales funnel, like this is people that haven't even opted in yet, they're going to binge maybe 7 hours or listen to 7 hours of your content. And so if you do not have long form content for people to consume, how in the world are they going to consume 7 hours of your content?
Correct.
They're not.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
Yeah.
100%.
Like you just podcasts are the only, not the only way. You could do videos, but it's much harder to do a solo video on YouTube for an hour long. Like podcast content, that is how you will give consumers in 2025 an opportunity to spend an hour with you, spend multiple hours with you to the point where they're like, okay, I trust this person. I can hear them have a conversation. I get their vibe.
Absolutely. And I have a YouTube channel and it is not easy. It's the biggest, heaviest lift in my marketing, but it's effective. But it's
Yeah.
like the biggest, heaviest lift. And so guest podcasting is long form content that you have in your toolbox. And like I had mentioned earlier, I have a Spotify playlist of all of the hosting that I've done. So if I pitch myself somewhere, I can include that for them to listen to who I am and what I believe and what I say and what I feel, right? That's
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't want people on my podcast who believe contrary to what I believe, right? Why? I would have wanted to.
Mhm.
I actually had to tell a guest that I'm not going to be publishing the content because we have different
Yeah.
thoughts on how things work. And it was the most uncomfortable conversation. And I had red flags when I booked them.
Yeah.
Oh, not cool. Okay, sorry, I went on a tangent. What what are the most common mistakes that guests make that cost them leads and how can they fix it?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is just going into selling mode and not understanding that podcast guesting is about providing value and having a relationship, building a relationship, having a conversation. Back when I did door-to-door canvassing, what they called it was having dollar signs in your eyes. So if you were
Desperate.
desperate to get donations, you would show up and it literally looked like you had dollar signs in your eyes
And
and you were so
and
desperate.
it exudes ickiness.
Yeah, it's just not you can tell. I remember I listened to this podcast episode. It's so funny. See, podcasts are also one of the few forms of content that people will remember for a very long time. Like I
Yes,
remember
it's a
this podcast
voice.
episode. Yeah, like I remember this podcast episode I listened to in like 10 years ago. Like it's so and I remember it was, oh, it's been long enough. I'll say it. So it was the Solopreneur Hour with Michael O'Neill. He's a great guy. And he was interviewing this author and every answer she'd like, well, in my book, like every answer she talked about in my book. And it was so promotional. I could tell Michael was like dying inside. He's like, oh my God.
I I I have had that where and in my podcast, I do feature the person that's on here, but when they're referring to their program on every question, it's
Yeah.
painful and we don't listen.
It's not a press junket. That's a thing. Like, it's
No.
not a press junket. And the most effective, like, if I love listening to Armchair Expert, which is one of the biggest
Me
podcasts in the world.
me too.
Armchair. And but you'll see most people on there are promoting something. They're promoting a show that just came out. They're promoting their movie. You don't hear about the movie until the very end of the interview.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, what are 3 things that have helped you to grow your business?
Yeah, so I'll share. So my first thing that I'll share is a pivot away from marketing, but it's super important. We use Profit First in our business. So Profit First accounting. I really recommend that
Yes.
because you can have great marketing and great sales, but if your finances are not organized, it's going to be a
Totally.
mess.
Mhm.
So Profit First, you can find like a Profit First, like there's like Profit First certified accountant. So I would definitely get set up with that as soon as possible. Number two, a team. I could not do this alone.
Well, by the
Um,
way, for all of you out there who are like, my business is in a position where I can bring somebody on, we are not talking about just employees. I
yeah,
started in 2019, 2020 with a VA for 2 hours a week. You can start anywhere.
I totally agree. Like you can get a virtual assistant in the Philippines. I mean, my first team member, still remember Angie Fisher. She was a US based virtual assistant, like had her own business, but I shelled out the money to hire her. She was like probably $30 an hour. So it was a big investment for me. I realize that's kind of a low investment for a virtual assistant now, but she really helped me set up like project management systems. So having a team and then yeah, you'll elevate into bigger hours and maybe full-time employees and things like that. But just delegating, having a team. And then I mean it's kind of meta, but just continuing to market, like always be marketing, ABM. A lot of people will do a marketing strategy and then they'll stop. I think it's like consistency in marketing
That is
because
correct.
the thing that has helped me grow my business is consistency. And it can be boring because what actually works is just doing
Killing it.
something over and over and over again and tweaking it, but sticking with it. Because so many entrepreneurs they get the shiny object syndrome and they're like, oh, I want to try this. I want to try this. I'm going to do this year and then this next year. And it's like, you're
Or they do a
starting
bunch of
over.
marketing and then they get clients and they're overwhelmed with client work and they don't want a team, but they stop
Yeah.
marketing. And then 3 months down the road, they're like, where are all my leads? And it's because you haven't done marketing. But
Yeah.
you have to be consistent. And there's systems that help you to be more
Hmm.
consistent and all that kind of stuff. But I would say consistent marketing is probably the best. In fact, you're one of the only guests on a marketing podcast that has said
Oh my gosh. Well, it's because it's so obvious, but it needs to be said.
True.
It needs to be said. You have to be, and you need the team so that you can keep marketing even when you get new clients.
Correct. Before we get to the gift that you are sharing with our audience, tell everyone about the services that you provide and any way that people can get help from you in case they're sitting here going, oh my God, I need Jessica's help.
Yeah, well, we're a done for you podcast booking agency, so pretty straightforward. We get you booked on podcasts. So if you want to be booked on
Or an
podcasts, that's what we
appropriate
do.
podcast, right?
Yes, podcasts that are a good fit for you. We do free consultation calls. So if anyone's interested in just having a conversation, seeing if we'd be a good fit, you can go to interviewconnections.com about that.
Yeah. And we have all of your links below. All right. Tell everyone what your freebie is and how it can help our audience.
Yeah, so we put together a podcast interview prep checklist because what we find is that most of the clients that we work with and entrepreneurs that hear me on a podcast is they've never been on a podcast before. This is a new strategy. It's why you're listening. And so to take away some of the nerves of like, can I do that? How do I do this right? How do I make sure I'm set up for success? What can I do before, during, and after the interview? Put together a nice little checklist for you, break it all down. So a lot of the tips we talked about in this interview are in that checklist. And we have that for free at interviewconnections.com/prep.
It's phenomenal. Everybody should be getting that. Thank you so much. First of all, it was a lovely conversation, but I really appreciate your valuable advice and your time today because time is money. If anyone listening or watching found some ideas and some tips that you can really take action on in your business, we would love for you to leave a review because reviews are the lifeblood of a podcast. Now go out there and do something good for your business, like snagging Jessica's checklist but then taking action. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jen.